Thank you for tuning in to LA Talk Live, reality radio handcrafted for your listening pleasure. This is LA Talk Live, and we're more than just talk. Stay tuned.
Exist in a state of vainglorious as we are protected by the red, the black, and the green. Heed the words of the brother, Sissy. Let us the words.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome once again to the dialogue. Real talk, real people. I'm your host, Starlett Quarles, and we're on live at latalklive.com and streaming all over your internet. 1690 AM, the one. Ustream 365 Live. We are streaming live at 5. And as always, the dialogue is the voice of our generation. So thank you so much for joining us here every Wednesday from 5 to 6:30, where we like to discuss the topics that are relevant to today's generational leaders. Today, we are launching a new series for the month of April. Let's talk politics. All month long, we're going to be introducing you to some local candidates here in California who are running for a variety of different offices. Now, this campaign season, y'all, and we, want to bring you up to speed on what's happening here locally in terms of California's political landscape. And two, we want to encourage you to get involved and engaged in your local election process and make sure that you vote this upcoming June for our campaign season. So this month, we are going to be meeting candidates from California's 62nd Assembly District, some who are running for offices throughout LA County, and candidates running for LAUSD Board District Seat 1. And we're launching tonight's series, Let's Talk Politics, with our discussion with the 64th Assembly candidates. There are three out of the top four. We have three out of the top four candidates here for you today. Councilman Mike Gibson, Councilman Stephen Neal, and Prophet Walker, all campaigning for your votes for the 64th Assembly District. Now, this area includes the communities of Carson, Compton, Wilmington, Rancho Dominguez, and portions of Long Beach. The 64th Assembly District is said to be one of the most heavily Democratic districts in the state of California. According to the Secretary of State's February 2013 registration report, the voter registration in the district is 67% Democrat and 10% Republican. It is among the most African American districts in the state, reporting that approximately 44% of the voters live in this predominantly African American precinct. Again, we have three of the candidates here tonight who are hoping that you cast your vote on June 3rd at the primary election, with the top two candidates advancing to the November 4th general election. And as always, this is a community conversation, so we definitely want to hear from you. We got candidates here, y'all. I know you got some comments or questions for our candidates, so give us a call here today, 323-473-3100. Again, 323-473-3100. And you can always post your comments on our Facebook page, facebook.com/thedialoguela. You can tweet me at StarQuar, or you can just hit me up on my cell phone for those of you who are privileged enough to have my cell phone number. Text me your comments or questions for the candidates of the 64th Assembly District. And we hope you've downloaded your on your smartphone if you're taking us on the road with you and not sitting in front of your computer. And if you missed any of our episodes, last month we discussed creating Black wealth. You can catch those episodes on our website at thedialoguela.com, or you can sign up for our mailing list and get notifications about upcoming shows and events that we're promoting here on The Dialogue. Now, we're going to take a very quick commercial break because we have so much to talk about with these candidates today from the 64th Assembly District, and we're hoping to hear from you again, 323-473-3100. All month long, we're talking politics with California candidates here on The Dialogue with me, Starlett Quarles. We're going to take a quick break, and we will be right back on The Dialogue. Real talk, real people.
Vibe sharer, not the era. Brother is balanced like the scales of Thor. An even-minded man makes stones seem soft. Corrupt all systems, positive poison of me. Some call it arc is a key. Black is the color while blackness.
I remember the early days of my business when I started with a personal computer, new business cards, and my line of credit was on plastic.
Now things have changed, and you have a real job-creating business.
Recently, I turned to my bank for a new loan and found out they couldn't meet my needs. I now realize that after the credit crisis, many financial institutions no longer have bankers with the necessary expertise to understand my business or have the ability to provide flexible credit solutions.
You searched for a better solution from someone with financial knowledge of a big bank and common sense understanding of a small business.
I found Michael Banner and the Los Angeles LDC, who solved my problem and exceeded my expectations. Now, when I have a credit or other financial need, my first call is to the Los Angeles LDC. They've earned my trust by providing the best credit solutions and advice at affordable rates and terms. Where do you go when the banks say no?
Los Angeles LDC, a community development financial institution, on the web at losangelesldc.com or by phone 800-366-1178. Loans made under a commercial finance lender's license from the California Department of Corporations.
Interested in advertising your business, product, or service here on The Dialogue? Call 323-547-7748. The Dialogue will help you promote your business, increase your traffic, and bring in new clients through innovative and creative marketing packages, including affordable radio ad campaigns for small businesses. Find out more. Call 323-547-7748. That's 323-547-7748. Or go to www.thedialoguela.com. And now, back to The Dialogue. The Dialogue with Starlett Quarles. Real talk, real people.
Welcome back. Welcome back to The Dialogue. Real talk, real people. I'm your host, Starlett Quarles, and all month long we are talking politics with our series, Let's Talk Politics. And tonight's discussion is with the 64th Assembly candidates. Again, we want to hear from you. I'm going to say the number again, 323-473-3100, 323-473-3100. Now, as I mentioned at the top of the show, there are 4 top candidates in the race for the 64th Assembly District. We do have 3 of them here tonight. In all transparency, we did invite the 4th candidate, Makai Ali, but due to some scheduling mix-up, he is out of town and will probably be joining us hopefully later on this month. But he was invited, and we did have some scheduling conflict. He would have been here, but we have the top 3 here with us today. So excited and grateful to have them here. And just another note of transparency, the candidates have not seen the questions that I'm going to ask them, although they were given a heads up on the subject matters. So we're going to be talking about the status of California and Sacramento, the 64th Assembly District in general. We have some questions around healthcare, economic development, education, criminal justice, and political accountability. And of course, we have the questions from you, 323-473-3100, or hit us up on Facebook or tweet me your questions, and we make sure that we're going to get them to our candidates. So without any further ado, let me graciously introduce our candidates, and then after that, they're each going to give a 2-minute opening statements, and then we're going to get into our round of community questions. Starting with Mr. Mike Gibson. Councilman Mike Gibson was first elected into the Carson City Council on March 8th, 2005, and was selected to serve as the mayor pro tem in March 2008. On March 3rd, 2009, he was re-elected another 4th term as a council member in a record-breaking number of votes in the city of Carson's history. In 2013, he broke his 2009 record with his re-election of his 3rd term in office. With a stronger mandate following his re-election, Mike is committed to continuing to demonstrate outstanding leadership and represent the people's voice while he is in office. Mike comes with a solid background in the areas of politics and public safety, owning his own profession as a union representative, his training as lead staff person for various elected offices, and a successful career as a former police officer. Welcome, Mr. Mike Gibson, Councilman Mike Gibson, to that. How are you doing?
I'm doing well.
I'm glad that we've been trying to get you on for a while, so I'm glad that you're here today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here.
Excellent. Sitting next to Councilman Gibson is Councilman Steve Neal. He has been a community and labor leader in Los Angeles area for decades, and has served North Long Beach on the Long Beach City Council since his election in 2010. A Compton native, Steve has an accomplished record supporting neighborhoods, small businesses, and working families. Councilmember Neal is the author and creator of the Long Beach Foreclosure Registry Program, the Long Beach Liquor Store Modernization Program, and the North Long Beach Business Alliance. You doing a whole lot of stuff in Long Beach.
We're trying.
All right. He has an unmatched record on the issues of jobs and economic development, bringing together businesses, labor, clergy, and community leaders on programs that lead to living wage job growth, including the Uptown Property and Business Improvement District in Long Beach and the Getting Back to Work Regional Job Summit. Finally, as a council member for the City of Long Beach, he also sits on the board of the Southern California Association of Governments, or SAG, where he works with leaders from other cities across the region to develop collective approaches to solving the problems that affect people across Southern California. Please welcome Stephen Neal to the dialogue. Welcome, sir.
Well, thank you very much.
How you doing today?
I'm doing fabulous.
Excellent. Thank you so much for joining us. And last but certainly not least is Mr. Prophet Walker. Your mama had big dreams for you with a name like Prophet.
It was my grandmother.
It was your grandma?
Yeah.
Grandma was on point. Prophet Walker, when Prophet was an infant, his birth mother succumbed to a heroin addiction. And at the age of 7, he went to live with his father in South Central Los Angeles. At 16, Prophet was sentenced to 6 years in prison for robbery and great bodily injury stemming from a fight with other teenagers. What happened next was anything but predictable. While in prison, Prophet said to himself, quote, "I am not a criminal. This is not going to be my life," end quote, and against all odds vowed to turn his life around. From that point, Prophet began a remarkable journey as a leader, role model, and community activist. While still in prison, he helped to start a program that gives incarcerated youth the ability to earn a 2-year college degree. Excellent. What was the name of that program?
It's the Youth Offender Program.
Youth Offender Program, and became the program's first graduate. Congratulations. To date, more than 100 of its graduates have left jail and enrolled in 4-year college programs, including Prophet, who graduated with a degree in engineering from Loyola Marymount University. He currently works with the Jordan Downs Redevelopment Project, which will transform a major housing development and create jobs right here in our Watts community in California. So please welcome Mr. Prophet Walker to the dialogue. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
So as I had mentioned at the top of the show, I'm going to give each of you 2 minutes to just kind of introduce yourselves to our viewers and let them know a little bit about your platform and about yourself. And I'm going to start with you, Councilman Gibson.
Thank you very much. First of all, I want to send out prayers to Fort Hood. There was a shooting that transpired today.
Absolutely. Thank you for that.
Some injuries that's taken place. But I am the city council member of the city of Carson, California. I've been elected to the council since 2005.
Just move the mic a little bit closer to you.
Since 2005,
Very
I've
good.
been on the Carson City Council. I'm in my 9th year on the
Wow.
city council. Since the work that I've begun to do on the city council, not only myself, but also the work that my colleagues have done, we've created over 161,000 brand new jobs. Since 2005, we have one of the lowest crime rates in the South Bay area. We have we have one of the lowest unemployment rates in the city of Carson, and businesses are coming to the city of Carson doing a remarkable work in the city of Carson and also employing individuals. But also my roots stem from South Central Los Angeles. I grew up in Watts, born and raised in Watts.
Where'd you go to school?
Fremont,
High school?
Went to John C. Fremont High School.
Fremont in the house.
Charles Drew Middle School.
Okay.
And 93rd Street Elementary School. We still have a family residence in Watts. Family is still rooted and grounded in Watts. I frequent Watts all the time.
Okay.
Grew up in the park. So I'm a very fabric of the South Central Los Angeles, coming up, pulling himself up out of his bootstraps, not getting involved in gangs and drugs and things of that nature. And one of the things that catapulted me to where I want to help my community, and that is become a police officer. I was the first African American hired in the history of the Maywood Police Department.
In the history? Wow, what an accomplishment.
Maywood Police Department no longer exists. It's been taken over by Los Angeles County Sheriffs. And so thus I left a good service record while being in Maywood. But most importantly, I enjoy being a public servant, and that's most important. It's not about the title, but it's about what you can do with the title to help make people's lives better. And so I pride myself to that particular fact, working for individuals like Merv Dimely.
And you can just wrap that up real quick?
Congressman Mervyn Diamond, State Senator Bill Green, Mark Riley Thomas, and Bob Farrell.
And you said that like you were speaking in tongues. All right. But thank you for that.
You're welcome.
2 minutes, sir. How you doing?
Well, good afternoon. Pleasure for me to be here this evening.
Excellent. Share with us who you are.
Well, my name is Stephen Neal. I'm currently a council member at the City of Long Beach, and I have spent the last 30 years or so being a community activist.
Okay.
Spent about 3 decades in the labor movement, which gave me the opportunity to work with several elected officials, about a decade at the LA County Federation of Labor, and running their field campaigns for many of the folks that we hold in elected office today.
Okay.
In 2006, I ran for the city council in Long Beach. I was unsuccessful in my first bid. I took on the incumbent. We lost by 100 votes.
Oh.
Yeah.
That was a stabber.
That was a stabber because, when you lose an election that close, it was you.
Mm-hmm. Do you know it was you?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay.
That was mistakes that I made.
Okay.
But then we came back again and we faced off in 2010. And the tables turned. So I won by about 700 votes in the next election, and that really started my life as a public servant. I'd been behind the scenes for so long.
Okay.
To be out in front took a little getting used to, but we went with a very aggressive agenda to address challenges in North Long Beach, which, when you look at it as an entirety, looks a lot like the 64th Assembly District from a social economic standpoint. We took on liquor stores. We took on the business community and the lack of development in our area. We took on the issue of jobs, and we had a pretty successful record in addressing those. I want to take that leadership and collaborative leadership, because that wasn't something that we did by ourselves, but it was by bringing community together, bringing business leaders, bringing the labor leaders together, bringing the community together to really zero in on some of the issues that had plagued the community for years and years, and coming up with some real viable solutions. And I think that kind of leadership is what we need in the 64th Assembly District.
Excellent. Well, one of the things and thank you for that. One of the things I love about Long Beach is Pine Street, and just the redevelopment that happens along Pine, so that it's more of a pedestrian-friendly environment. So thank you for sharing your 2-minute intro. And last but not least, Mr. Prophet Walker. I feel like I just want to pray every time I say your name. But tell us, introduce our audience to you.
All right, as was stated earlier, my name's Prophet Walker, candidate for the 64th Assembly District, and I think you guys eloquently pointed out my journey to get here.
It's not politics. I mean, these guys got a political background. You was doing something different.
Doing the work, and
you was on the streets.
So notwithstanding the journey to get here, I think it's now time to focus on the here and now in the state of our district.
Very good.
And currently in some parts of our district, there's still double-digit unemployment rates. There's astronomical dropout rates in some of our schools. And while I respect the tenure of all the other candidates in this race, there's now time to have a serious conversation of what's been happening, why this district, this area is still low performing amongst all in California. Okay. And so in that light, I'm focused on bringing serious change and innovative change and ideas to the 64th in the form of education. We need to focus on our children's foundation with early education for all. We then need to focus on our justice system. We have some of the highest incarceration rates in this district, and until we fix that problem, we need to fix the broken families that come from that, the broken community, and thus the broken economy. And from there, I have a keen experience as working as as an engineer. Well, working as an engineer, I have a pretty good experience in what it takes to rebuild our infrastructure and how important that is, both aesthetically, economically, and how much of morale it gives to the overall community. And so these are the things that we actually need to focus on and begin to get done. And that's the type of change I will, in fact, bring to the district.
And I'm going to ask you guys all to kind of elaborate on your particular platforms, but I'm going to start with you, Prophet, on why exactly are you running for the Assembly, and specifically the 64th?
So it goes goes back to my early childhood, and I look at the 64th, and then I look at my own circumstances and realize that most of the children in this area grow up under the same set of circumstances and end up in the same predicament that I actually ended up in.
So elaborate on what your circumstances were.
And when I talk about my circumstances specifically, going into schools that have failed, from going into schools that have failed in tough neighborhoods, ending up incarcerated, minus the third act of coming home and actually doing something productive. And it's a constant sort of mantra in this district. And as a result, it's important for me to, now that I have the platform and can in fact do something to change it, it's important for me to go and fight for our children, to say that we are no longer accepting mediocrity in this district, period.
But why assembly?
And the assembly specifically, think about the issues that are most keen to me when I focus on them. It's our justice system.
Okay.
That's a state issue.
Okay, very
it
good.
needs to be tackled on the state level. We think about our education system. This is a state issue that needs to be tackled on a state issue. It needs someone up there with courage, a keen experience, and the willingness to fight and go the extra mile for our children. And so that's why the state.
Excellent. You've been councilman all this time. Now why you want to be on the assembly?
Well, my reasons are very similar in some ways to what Mr. Walker stated. I look at this district. I've grown up in this district. I've lived in this district my entire life. And I can remember a time when some of the communities here were thriving. And as you mentioned, how Pine and Long Beach has developed, what I see is a complete opposite when you look at the 64th. They're actually regressing.
In what respect?
In respect of job growth, in respect of economic development, local businesses. When I was coming up in the district, you had African Americans owning grocery stores and shops, and I don't see that now. I know the demographics have changed, but there is a direct correlation, I think, with the lack of economic growth in the district, the educational challenges that we have in the district, and the deterioration that we have. And I think, to Mr. Walker's credit, that a lot of these issues are state issues.
Okay.
Education is a huge issue.
Yes, it is.
Education, but economic development is also a big issue, but we can't have one without the other. If you look at what's happening to our children, they're not being trained for employment or even entrepreneurship opportunities.
Definitely not entrepreneurship.
They're not. They're actually being trained for prison.
Right,
so
for the underground economy or for hip hop and basketball.
And we all know that this underground economy exists, that something has to be done. And I think you need independent thinkers, but what I also think that you need is folks that are able to work outside of themselves, because none of us are going to be able to get this done by ourselves.
Right.
So you're going to have to be able to build coalitions. You're going to have to be able to work with other groups, particularly other ethnic groups, because as we all know, there are no traditional black neighborhoods anymore. When Compton was a black community, Inglewood was a black community. If you look at the demographics of these communities now, and they don't look like us. So for us to thrive and for us to grow, we're going to have to be able to form coalitions. We're going to have to be able to work with other groups, but at the same time, not pushing aside or making sure that our people are left behind. And I want to address that.
Okay, very good. Mr. Gibson, why are you running for the assembly?
I'm running for the California State Assembly, this district, because I was born and raised in it.
Okay.
I touched every fabric of this community, of the 64th, in a very intimate way. Manchester, growing up, on 89th and Avalon, Green Meadows Park. I remember playing in the parks, being able to go to summer programs, and the pools are open. Well, that doesn't exist.
That doesn't exist anymore for our kids. No after-school programs.
No after-school programs. Then I remember when Will Rogers Park, now Ted Watkins Park, where used to meet my friends there and play and things of that nature. But we had to make sure that we were home before the street lights came on.
Before the street lights came on, or Mama would get you.
Or Mama would get it, but for good reasons too, because the streets weren't safe. And I find myself going back to the same community in which I grew up in. The helicopter is still flying overnight. 77th is still rolling code 3 up and down the street, southeast, southwest, and those are police departments in that particular community. I remember when I lived in Compton, and I remember my older son attended attending Ralph Bunche Elementary School, which was a distinguished school in Compton, and went to Enterprise Middle School. My church is in North Long Beach. As part of this district, I live in Carson, where I govern. Watts, Wilmington, where I'm the chief of staff for Jerome Horton. We're working with those businesses in that community. I remember growing up being bullied. I remember
Bully, what they bullying you for?
Running from you go to school, you find bullies, and so what I tried to do is I tried to make sure that our schools are safe for our children. I want to make sure our parks are safe for our children. So that's why I work each and every day, making sure that create an atmosphere in the city of Carson where our kids can play, where our kids can go to school to and from and not have to worry about being bullied and being harassed. The city of Carson, under my leadership, will be the first city in the state of California will declare and create an ordinance that makes this entire city a bully-free city.
Well, how are you making a bully-free city? What happens if you bully somebody?
It'll be a misdemeanor.
Is that right?
And then after, to start off with an infraction, and then you have to pay a fine. You have to go to counseling. Then if it happens again, you will not only go to counseling, but also you have to pay a fine, and then it goes all the way up to a misdemeanor.
Now,
and it could be
the child has to pay, or the parents have to pay?
Both.
Okay. All right. Very good.
Both. So if it's a minor, the parents have to pay, but it will stop because remember, small bullies grow up to be big bullies, and big bullies sometimes marry.
Ooh. Is that right? So I want to start with you. We've talked about the local level. We talked about the AD. So what changes do you want to see in Sacramento? What changes need to be made in Sacramento?
Well, I think one of the things that we really need to look at is our tax code and our tax structure, the way we tax. And when you see other states surrounding us and the fact that we have such flight of businesses that leave our state based on taxing and environmental regulations, I think it's an issue that is time to be addressed.
Okay.
That education, as all of us have mentioned here, is something that really needs to be looked upon, and really not with rhetoric, but with real action.
Okay.
Our kids are failing. Our kids are, particularly our African American males, their dropout rate is unacceptable. Their admission into college is unacceptable, and there's really nothing being done about it.
So do you have a strategy to improve black male achievement?
I do have a strategy to achieve it, and the strategy comes, and it's not something that the strategy is. It is a community approach. To address any problem, and this has been my experience, and I think this is why I've been able to have the success that I've had at a council level, is by bringing key stakeholders together, right, and continue to drill down on what the challenge is. And I mean really bringing people that are committed together, because none of us have the solution alone.
Right.
And there's more than one entity that's involved, but there has to be a commitment to making sure that things get better. And I do have a plan for that. I'm not going to go
into detail
too much into proprietary information, but yes, and that's one of the things I want to take on.
Okay, very good. And I'm going to come to you, Robert. Tell us what changes need to be made in Sacramento.
One of the changes that need to be made in Sacramento when it comes down to funding, because we promised California, and this was a tax. We promised California, if you pass Proposition 30, that our schools will be funded to the fullest maximum they could be. Right now, money is being taken away from our schools. When you look at schools in South Central Los Angeles, 109th Street School, where you don't have a library, why is that? Why does that exist?
I know. We grew up with libraries in our community.
We grew up in libraries, but there's kids in South Central Los Angeles and Watts that don't have access to libraries,
right,
don't have good textbooks, don't have good desks and things of that nature. So we need
entertainment
to make
venues.
sure.
I mean, we got Watts Star. We've been trying to get a theater in Watts for over 40 years.
For over 40 years.
Absolutely.
And so we need to have those things. We need to make sure that Watts receive the kind of promise that people made.
Move a little bit closer to the microphone.
That people made to the Watts community. Promises made, promises not kept. And I want to be able to bring that kind of leadership to make those promises come to fruition, because people are hurting.
What promises were made and what promises weren't kept?
Businesses, when the Watts riot took place, they was going to rebuild in the Watts community, and that didn't take place.
All right.
We have still vacant lots in the Watts community, and absent redevelopment, 400 cities no longer have access to redevelopment, where you could take that redevelopment money and also build some kind of enterprise, some kind of business, and create small businesses for people who want to become entrepreneurs. Well, those things don't exist any longer. And so when it comes down to taxes, we need to make sure we hold people accountable, especially when it comes down to our schools. We have to make sure that we have the best educational system so we can compete with Japan and other foreign countries, because if we sleep, we're going to miss the boat. And other kids are coming over here in the United States and not having the ability. Okay.
Do you agree? Do you agree in terms of some of what they're saying in terms of some of the changes that need to be made in Sacramento?
Yeah, somewhat, to some extent. I think that a part of the changes that also need to be made in Sacramento stems certainly from a funding perspective, but more specifically, just recently in our budget, we approved an additional $500 million to continue to build prisons. This is a serious issue.
Absolutely.
We cannot continue to incarcerate our way out of the issues that we have. It's impossible. The federal government said we can no longer do it. That money can in fact be used for things with education that Mike pointed out earlier. We can take some of the money that's being used to incarcerate folks and put it back in our education systems. We can focus more heavily on ways that we can give more money and tax credits to redevelopment projects.
Okay.
One of the largest redevelopment projects that's on the horizon right now is the one in Jordan Downs.
I'm glad you brought that up, because something recently happened where they lost some funding.
Correct.
Can you talk about that?
And so it's another one of these issues where it's a combination of, I think, some leadership that shouldn't have been there, and just a constant overlooking of this district. And there
Absolutely.
needs to be a very united front in this district, from the congressional level down to the city council level, to fight for funding such as this to bring vital projects like the redevelopment.
So will it ever happen? Is it still scheduled to happen?
So the project is still scheduled to happen.
Okay.
It's certainly an uphill battle. That was some pivotal funding and credibility to the project, but it is certainly still on track to fulfill its promise to the community.
And just quickly before we go to commercial break, for those of you who aren't familiar with the Jordan Downs project, could you just quickly share with us a little bit about that project and the redevelopment
Absolutely.
plan for it?
So the redevelopment plan for the Jordan Down housing project is to actually not displace residents, first and foremost, and build on a existing factory site that's nearby, remediate the soil and begin building there so residents are not displaced from their area, and build one-for-one subsidized housing, but add on an additional 700 of market rate and affordable living, so residents can eventually matriculate their way through the housing process out of poverty. In addition to that, that's the bricks and mortar side, the construction, that side. The other side is the idea of human capital, and saying that we have a untapped and oftentimes wasted amount of human capital in this district, and in the projects specifically. And so there's a substantial amount of funding that is focused directly on case management, actually getting folks jobs. In fact, I'm charged with the job to pinpoint the amount of necessary construction jobs that residents can in fact hire, and help them get into those jobs.
Okay. Yeah, you want to say something?
Well, I was going to say something else. One of the things that I'm concerned about is the absence of proposition. When we did away with 209,
okay,
and that was an affirmative action.
Absolutely.
Because it has not allowed those who have done well in school in order to go into an institution of higher learning.
And I'm a proud product of affirmative action.
I want to make sure that we revisit Prop 209 to making sure that we reinstitute Proposition 109, because there's a whole bunch of young people who have the desire to go to a university and don't have that opportunity as it presently exists. And so I think that did away with the very fabric of, especially in California, when they did away with Proposition 209. And so I want to fight to make sure the Proposition 209 comes back in its form to benefit people of color.
Okay, excellent. We're going to take a quick commercial break, and when we come back, we're going to start with you, Councilman Neal. Thank you, Richard, for that. We haven't heard from you. 323-473-3100. 323-473-3100. We're talking politics this month on The Dialogue, and today our conversation is with the 64th Assembly candidates. We have Mike Gibson, Steve Neal, and Prophet Walker here today. So give us a call, 323-473-3100. We're going to take a quick commercial break, and we'll be right back.
We ain't falling for the same trap, standing on the balconies where they shot the king at. McCain got apologies, ain't nobody hearing that. People need honesty. Lower things have been sick, we ain't ready to have a black president. Lower things have been sick, we ain't ready to have a black president. Yes, we can change the world. Change the world.
We know there are many choices in internet radio, and the staff and host of LA Talk Live would like to thank you for choosing the internet's hottest destination for the most eclectic sound and invigorating talk. This is LA Talk Live. We are more than just talk.
Young Connection, your one-stop connection for all your graphic design and commercial printing needs. Young Connection is a full-service printing and media design company dedicated to providing the highest level of customer service and satisfaction. Young Connection provides swift response and rapid turnaround services for banners, brochures, business cards, letterheads, church bulletins, funeral programs, flyers, logo design, posters, and much, much more, all at an affordable price. Young Connection, the official printing company of LA Talk Live. Give them a call at 310-491-3336. That's 310-491-3336, or visit their website at www.youngconnection.com. That's www.youngconnection.com. Young Connection Printing and Media Services, proud sponsors of LA Talk Live, where it's more than just talk.
Hey, this is James Kinney, inviting you to join me every Thursday at noon for the Business of Business. Join us as we discuss success and how to reach it. Listen, don't forget to join me every Thursday at noon Pacific Standard Time for the Business of Business, exclusively here on LA Talk Live. Hey, and don't forget, you can also catch me on iTunes Radio R&B, Radio Flag, TuneIn Radio, Live 365, AHA Radio, TiVo Radio, and Apple TV Radio, or just watch and listen directly at latalklive.com, where we are more than just talk. Murked it.
Welcome back. Welcome back to the Dialogue, Real Talk, Real People. We're talking politics this month on the Dialogue, and our conversation tonight is with the candidates of the 64th Assembly District, and we have our sponsor for today, Herbert's Lemonade. We was in here just thirsty and sparse for liquid, so we have some Herbert's Lemonades that our candidates are doing. So before we went to commercial break, you wanted to say something, Councilman Neal?
I did. Councilman Gibson brought up something in regards to Prop 30 and the funding that was supposed to be designated for education. And I'd like to go even further back than that. And, you know, that was the whole purpose of the lottery system. Mm-hmm. What I would really like to see done at a state level is maybe an audit of the lottery, because what has happened to all of those funding that was supposed to go into our education system? We're always coming up with Prop 30s or other ways to address education funding when we continually put things in place and we never seem to affect change. Mm-hmm. I think we need to look at these issues, find out exactly what's happening with those dollars from a state perspective, and then readdress or redistribute dollars to the places that they need to be going to.
Okay, thank you for elaborating on that. Now I want to, Richard, we're getting text that the phone is ringing busy. No. Okay, so the phone lines are open, 323-473-3100, 323-473-3100. So for the benefit of the constituents of the 64th Assembly District, what exactly have you done? What exactly have you done within this district? And I'm going to start with you.
In this district, because Carson is part of the 64th.
Just talk about some of the work that you've done specifically within the...
Well, recently I've been to at least maybe 9 different churches supporting Obamacare.
Okay.
Making sure cover California. Making sure
glad
that
you brought that up because I'm going to ask you about that. But
making sure that people who don't have present health care coverage go out and sign up before the deadline. And so I was in churches Sunday after Sunday, making sure that I encouraged people to go out to nearby kiosks in the city of Carson.
And how was that happening? Were you getting people sign up? I mean, I've done some Obamacare events, and were people coming out? Are people signing up?
We just had a tribute to Cesar Chavez in the city of Carson. In the Carson Mall, we had droves of people signing up for Cover California. City on the Hill in Carson. After church, people signed up for Cover California.
Very good.
And so it's been systematic throughout, at least the city of Carson, promoting Cover California, because we want to make sure that people have health care coverage. If our president go on the limb for what he has done to making sure that all Americans have health care coverage, then it's my job to make sure that I'm the Pied Piper and go out there and talk about it.
Excellent. I love it. Prophet, what specifically, talk about some of your work in the 64th Assembly District.
Absolutely. So one of the proud moments is a camp program that we were able to create. We looked at the 4 housing projects and watched that have been historically against one another based on just their geographic location that happen to have gangs. We've been able to bring children from those housing projects all together at once in camp. We started off our first weekend. It was with the children, their parents, elected leaders, police officers, and we all began to build the bond of the community back again. We've since now taken that a step further and focused specifically on Markham Middle School, and we're bringing summer camp to end the summer learning loss, hopefully. That happens over the summer. And more specifically, or more importantly, also is infrastructure. I am working on the Jordan Downs housing project, and as we know, infrastructure brings more jobs to the community.
Absolutely.
And it is my number one goal is to bring more jobs back to this community, and that's something I work on daily.
And when we get to economic development, I'm going to ask you specifically about how you plan on doing that. Councilman Neal, talk about some of the work that you've done specifically in the 64th Assembly District.
Well, prior to me being in elected office, I ran a nonprofit. And
what was it called?
Labor Community Services Food and Emergency Program.
That's a long title.
It's a long title. It's a partnership between the AFL-CIO and the United Way.
Okay, very good.
And what we did was pay utility assistance, partial rent payments, emergency food, toy giveaways. So for a decade, I ran that organization, and a majority of the clientele that we serviced were from the communities of the 64th Assembly District. So for decades, I provided those kind of social service things, as well as some goodwill efforts in the sense of Easter baskets into homeless shelters, abused children shelters, the hospitals, and then besides that, the extent of my work has probably been in the area of politics and working on political campaigns of many of the folks that have come before us in that particular area.
So you guys have all had a pulse on your district or within this district. You guys have all had some experience working with it quite extensively. So that's good to know. And I believe we have a caller. Hi, caller. You on with the dialogue? You have a comment or question?
Hello, it's Michael Banner.
Hi, Michael Banner, friend to the dialogue. He was on our show last week on economic development. You have a comment or question for our guests?
Yeah, I do have a question. I think today UCLA's Anderson School released their current research about what's happening in LA County and the lack of jobs that are being created. And I'm wondering if your guests have any particular strategies that they intend to use to create jobs if they get elected?
Very good. Excellent question. I'm going to start with you.
PLA agreements, public partnership labor agreements, making sure that if public funds are being used for a project that they have to hire residents in the community. We've done that in the city of Carson, where we have taken not only public money but also private money and mandated that individuals hire locally within our residency, to making sure that those individuals have jobs and being able to do the kind of work that's necessary. I think city of Carson, again, since 2005, 161,000 brand new jobs have been created.
161,000
brand new jobs. Carson is 60% industrial and 40% residential, so we have a lot of warehouses in the city of Carson.
Okay, very good.
And so we're building and invested in $125 million into a landfill that was uninhabitable. Now we're building and we have sewer lines in. We're going vertical now, where we're signing we've signed a number of agreements. So you don't have to. Let me just say it this way: you don't have to go to Cabo Sun to go and do your outlet shopping.
Is that right?
You're going to be able to do it right there in the city of Carson, and that
When?
project is going to create over 10,000 brand new jobs that wasn't there before right in the city of Carson. Not to mention, we have, which is the second in the United States of America, which is a Porsche experience. You can drive a $150,000 car on a test track, and while you're thinking about what color to buy, the red one or the green one, then you can have a fine dining and a 5-star restaurant right there on the track.
All this is
and
in the
that's
city of
gonna,
Carson.
All in the city of Carson, and
Wow.
that's going to create over 300 permanent jobs right there in the city of Carson.
Okay, so all of you, I want you guys to answer Michael Banner's question. And caller, please hold on. I'm going to get to you next. Michael Banner's question on job development and economic development.
Absolutely. Councilman Gibson was right on in regards to the project labor agreements and public private public partnerships, social impact bonds, right, where pay is produced for results. I think we have to do a combination of approaches, right? We have to look at these infrastructure improvements. If we were to work on, if we were to get legislation passed to, one, high-speed rail, which would help produce jobs, but also if we ever get to the point where we're working on our roads, our freeways, our bridges, anything dealing with transportation infrastructure, that is going to put thousands of people to work, and in turn have a domino effect for local businesses and spending dollars. But I think we need to also look at attracting new growth industries, particularly green energy industries that are looking to relocate to the cities of Carson, to the cities of Compton, to the cities of Long Beach because of their proximity to the port and the opportunity that the two ports there represent. Those two ports represent 50% of all goods and services that enter this country, and there are a lot of job opportunities that are there and develop right from there.
Okay. And Prophet, so what is your economic development priority for the 64th Assembly District?
So it all lies within the overall infrastructure of the area, and also the overall infrastructure of California. Currently, right now, like I said, I literally dig down deep to the construction project of Jordan Downs, all the way to the point of how many laborers that we can hire within the residents. This isn't a philosophical thing that's happening. It's happening now, where we're going to, just in the remediation process alone, we'll potentially be able to hire 50 solid residents from Jordan Downs just for remediation. And then I want to focus in also on transportation. A part of the whole economy is we need access to and from work. We need to be able to get there fluidly. In the 64th, a lot of people have lower incomes and can't afford a car and drive back and forth. So we certainly need to focus in on different transportation to get folks out. And then the third part of that, I think, in the 64th specifically, we have a branding issue. And
what is the current brand?
The current brand is sort of, we think of Compton and Watts and those areas, and we begin to think back of the riots and gangs and such.
Right.
And that keeps businesses out. And so we have a requirement to focus on rebranding this area so that we can bring back investment and manufacturing. The United States, all across the United States, is focusing on ways to bring back domestic manufacturing. And currently in Watts, in Carson, in Compton, these areas are currently zoned for industrial. And so they're prime locations to bring back manufacturing and bring back homegrown jobs.
Excellent. Richard, we still have a caller. Hi, caller. Are you on with the dialogue?
Yes. How are you?
Hi. Who are we speaking with?
This is Cecil Flournoy, and how you doing, Ms. Quarles?
Hi, Cecil Flournoy, your housing manager. We had him here last week on the show talking about economic development. You have a comment or question for our guest?
Yeah, I just wanted to it's along those same lines of Michael Banner's question and dealing with economic development, but kind of wanted to tease out a little more in terms of mechanics of what the electeds, assuming they were, elected to office, what exactly would you do per se? For example, what are your thoughts with regards to foreign direct investment? That's a direct correlation to the manufacturing jobs that I do think are prevalent in your district or potentially your district. Also, small business development. And then what exactly are you guys talking about with infrastructure?
Okay.
Because with transportation projects and infrastructure projects, they will create jobs, but they're typically temporary jobs. So in terms of permanent jobs, what do you actually see as your bailiwick to kind of get that done?
Excellent question. I'm going to start with you, Prophet.
Okay. I'll go back, or starting from where he left off. And I think specifically when we speak about infrastructure, and what those jobs are temporary, a part of this is actually working with some of the trades unions. They are typically temporary in terms of the project size, but also note that most transportation jobs and large infrastructure jobs are between 5 and 10 years. So this is a substantial amount of time for folks to be employed, also get apprenticeships, and then eventually journey out to where they're actually more employable to the larger economy. So this isn't about just bringing jobs just to the community. We need to figure out ways to have residents infused into the larger Los Angeles and California economy.
Councilman Neal, on permanent jobs versus temporary jobs.
Well, I think as far as permanent jobs, developing that area and getting investment in those areas are the things that are going to make jobs happen for that district.
Okay.
One of the handicaps that we've had, and it was brought up earlier in the conversation, was the loss of redevelopment.
Mm-hmm.
The 64th Assembly District was a prime area to receive redevelopment funding, right? Which is an incentive for developers to come in underdeveloped areas.
Absolutely.
So now without that tool in the toolkit, we have to be very creative in order to make those investments happen. And those are the kind of ideas that we have to really bring local businesses together, bring labor together, and also all the other community stakeholders, because we have to find a way to reinvest in these communities.
Absolutely.
Councilman Gibson talked about Carson. Carson is the jewel of the 64th Assembly District, but it's also an anomaly when you look at it.
The jewel. You guys are the jewel.
They're the jewel of that district.
Why is it the jewel? Why is it coming up? Huh?
The 64th is the jewel.
I'm talking about from a social economic
Very
standpoint.
good.
If you just look at it, all the things that he's talking about, you're seeing that there. The rest of the district has to catch up.
Absolutely.
So
the rest of the district, meaning you got Compton, Wilmington, Rancho Dominguez.
Yeah, and
Okay.
part of that is having some form of collaborative leadership with the elected leaders and stakeholders in that area. I think we have to look at this area more from a regional standpoint than what we've been individually.
Okay.
Carson doing work over here. We're doing this in Compton. These guys are doing this in Watts. How can we come together now?
How can we just all get along?
Exactly. How can we come together now and start saying, let's look at this from a regional standpoint, and where there's a nexus for us to come together, let's start doing that where we can enhance the entire region, which would benefit all of us.
Okay. And the callers, I know, please stay on hold. Now we have 2 callers on hold. Let me get to Councilman Gibson. So what do you have to think about what Cecil said?
So let me just say this, that there's a young man named Ricky. Ricky has no job. Ricky's been unemployed for the past 5 years. I just met Ricky. Ricky would take a part-time job. He would take a temporary job, because if you give a man a paycheck, it turns his entire life around. And so I believe that if Ricky get a part-time job or a temporary job and move his self-esteem to a level where he's motivated to get a full-time job and someone else sees that, then it's worth Ricky having a part-time job or a temporary job. I believe in foreign investment.
Okay.
That's the reason why our President of the United States, President Barack Obama, said EB5. EB5 is taking foreigners outside the United States of America, coming in $500,000 and investing into an existing business that would create 10 jobs. Those 10 jobs will last for 3 years, a minimum of 3 years. Those are the kinds of people who I want to have dialogue to, and especially when it comes down to Watts, Willowbrook, and Wilmington, which is adjacent to the Port of Los Angeles, which a number of people in Wilmington have no job and double digits in unemployment. We have to look and think outside the box. And if we can create foreign opportunities from foreign investors to come in and invest into our communities and build the standard and the fabric and the infrastructure up, that's what we need to do. And that's what I've been doing since I've been on the city council. And some people talk about, well, Carson needs to have that. No, Carson is doing the good job, because this is what we're supposed to do. Is we're supposed to put our people to work. That's one of the reasons why we have low unemployment rates, and we are unapologetic for it.
I need to put you in contact with a Nigerian EB5
I would love
model.
to.
You want to say something?
I did. I think one of the tools that we can use also is to really allocate dollars for incentives for small businesses, for folks to be able to open businesses in the district, and also going back to the point I made earlier in regard to growth industries, emerging industries. There is a law on the book that will allow incentives for companies that are investing in green and new technologies. And I think we have to find a way to get that down and get cities to advertise it and start going out and attracting these kind of businesses into our areas, because as mentioned earlier, these are light industrial areas. There's a lot of warehousings, there's a lot of logistics, but the infrastructure is created for manufacturing.
Okay.
So by attracting the kind of businesses that can thrive would benefit all of us.
Now, Prophet, I want to ask you specifically in terms of the reentry and the formerly incarcerated and them coming back home and not having the opportunities and the resources. I mean, can you talk about your plan to help the formerly incarcerated and how they can get jobs and get back on their feet so that we can kind of lower the recidivism rate of some of our brothers and sisters going back into the system?
Absolutely. So one of the things that I was blessed with is certainly having family and a support when I came home. The reality is that's not the case for most guys re-entering. In fact,
you were scared straight.
So most guys, they re-enter with a $200 gate money at the gate, walking out of California prisons, and are put back into the same area. This is impractical. It's not worked so far. And so for me, what we've done so far is created a nonprofit called ARC, the Anti-Recidivism Coalition, where we take members who were in the college program that we started before, who are all attending four-year universities or two-year colleges. We go up and lobby for better policy within the justice system, but also on the other side, we use our stories and our narratives to work with companies like Tom's and others to focus on the fact that guys who are formerly incarcerated, in fact, have the ability and the capacity to do great things. And so we've partnered with a lot of different private companies. One specifically is Martin Outdoor Media, where all the contracts you see to clean up the bus stops in Los Angeles, those are folks who are being coming out and focusing in on the bills of ban the box and other things to constantly give guys more and more opportunities is completely important.
We've done a lot of shows here on the formerly incarcerated. Matter of fact, I was corrected to call them returning citizens.
I like it.
So, but I want to ask both you gentlemen, in terms of the formerly incarcerated, are returning citizens. I mean, where does entrepreneurship lie? I mean, some of these brothers, I mean, the underground economy, one thing I appreciate about the underground economy is that it's an economy. There is a supply and demand, and that some of these guys just have natural entrepreneurial skills.
So I want to actually to speak to that. There's a program I work with actually inside that literally focuses in on guys while they're there and teaches them from professionals currently, really successful ones, and they teach them and also cultivate their business model and offer grants for them when they come home to actually carry out their business models.
I think that's so important.
And these are private nonprofits, people from the entertainment world and otherwise who care about places like this district, and they're bringing in investment. So it's important to constantly help these private organizations.
Absolutely. So what are you doing, or what is your plan or your priority in terms of our returning citizens and helping them get back on their feet in terms of their housing? I mean, we don't address mental illness. I mean, because some of them are dealing with PTSD from what they've experienced. Some of these are non-violent offenders, but they're experiencing violence on a daily basis, and they're having to bring this back home to their communities. So both of you gentlemen, what is your plan for our returning citizens in terms of helping them get jobs, economic development, housing, and dealing with their health care?
Well, I created a program called the Construction Worker Outreach Program, which was a collaboration between our Workforce Investment Board, the Building Trades community, and the Ministers Alliance. And what we have done are targeted those folks that have questionable backgrounds and can't get work any other place. when you look at the building trades, that offers a great opportunity for folks that have the aptitude to do some math, some science, but a willingness to work and actually an opportunity for a career. I think that's a start. That's not the only way, but it is a start, and it does provide individuals an opportunity to not only make a living, but to have a portable career. Because if you go through one of these apprenticeship programs, and the majority of them are 4 to 5 years in length, but when you come out on the other end, now you have a portable skill where you can go any place in the country and basically get work that can support a family.
Or always start your own business. I mean, because
Right.
I've had friends who they're getting plumbers. They get certified as plumbers.
Exactly.
They're doing fire stuff. I mean, some of these guys fighting fires are formerly incarcerated.
That's
But
right.
what is your plan for the formerly incarcerated?
Well,
our returning citizens.
Returning citizens, I like that phrase, that terminology. One of the things is partnering with labor organizations. And the reason why I say labor organizations, because they have apprenticeship programs.
Okay.
I don't know about you, but when a plumber comes to my home to do plumbing work, he walks out at least with $100 or more. And he can spend less than 30 minutes at my home doing whatever he does in order to make my life better. And so you can be a plumber, electrician, and there's apprenticeship programs that the unions have made available to turn people's lives around, especially those who've been formerly incarcerated, and be able to, go into not only home ownership, purchase your own car, and be able to have the piece of American dream, the piece of the pie. And so those are the kind of programs that we need to start. And also going back to trade, going back to schools. I remember we don't have any wood shops. We don't have any auto mechanic shops. Well, those are industries in which can pay a decent wage and living and also go into home ownership. The auto build industry have an apprentice program where you can come in and go to Cerritos College and you can go and do that and get a certificate and become an auto mechanic, and then you get paid like $50 or something like that an hour. And so it's changing lives, and we need to get people into those kinds of programs in a very, very serious way. That's why I support vocationary schools in order to help young people who may not want to go to a four-year university or a junior college, but go into a trade opportunity at school. There's a lot of value in there.
Yes, sir.
I want to speak to an issue, or speak to a topic on this issue that we didn't get to, which was, in fact, the mental health. It is truly a serious issue. You know,
it's a pink elephant in our community.
Oftentimes, you go into these institutions where you might be a little messed up, you come out just a little bit more messed up because there's harsh conditions inside. There's a conditioning not to feel oftentimes, and so while we're getting these guys jobs and getting them into training, and our guys and girls, it is important for us to actually work on their mental health. One of a study I read, which was just striking, that in places like Watson, Compton, we have higher levels of post-traumatic stress than folks in Baghdad.
Wow,
crazy.
Really?
It was a UCLA study, and it's out of hand. And we cannot have a healthy community, we cannot have a healthy workforce or anything until we actually start taking care of some of the mental health issues.
Richard, do we still have callers on hold? Okay, so callers, we want you to call back 323-473-3100, 323-473-3100. And just another strategy, some of these guys can vote. I mean, if you have a misdemeanor, you can vote. If you've completed your parole. I mean, so to the extent that you guys are mobilizing this untapped pool of voters, they can turn a race if they want to.
Which Absolutely. I think is the beauty of my candidacy. A lot of guys, I get the question all the time, can you run? And I'm like, yeah, and you can run, and you can vote. And
Absolutely.
Let's do it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So we're going to take a quick commercial break, and when we come back, I'm going to ask you specifically about the health care, Obamacare. He just had 7+ million people sign up for Obamacare this past March 31st, which was the deadline. So I want to get you guys' thoughts on the Affordable Care Act and for the ability for people to have affordable health care here in California. We're going to take a quick commercial break, 323-473-3100. For those callers who was on hold and hung up, please call back. We want to hear your comments or your questions for our candidates of the 64th Assembly District. I hope you get to know them better. You're kind of leaning towards which candidate you want to check the box on June 3rd. So give us a call here at 323-473-3100. We'll be right back.
locked, the trunk stay locked. Glock on cock, the block stay hot.
We know there are many choices in internet radio, and the staff and host of LA Talk Live would like to thank you for choosing the internet's hottest destination for the most eclectic sound and invigorating talk. This is LA Talk Live. We are more than just talk.
It started out like a totally normal day.
I love you.
I mean, I guess I was a little sweaty and I was definitely sore. I thought I had gas. Turns out I was having a heart attack. Heart disease is the #1 killer of American women. So now I take care of myself and tell the other women in my life to do the same. Make it your mission to save your life and the lives of the women you love. Find out more from the American Heart Association at goredforwomen.org.
Journey Sisters is an organization that embodies and captivates women from all walks of life. Our membership includes 44 women that are constantly growing in the areas of personal development and community involvement. Monthly, we offer free leadership classes at McCade's Restaurant. Journey aims to inform women in the areas of heart disease and HIV and AIDS. Experience the journey
Turn up the radio
by logging www.journeymosaicinc.com. Toll free 888-906-5519. Journey with no excuses.
Callers, I'm so sorry. You guys have been on hold. Please call back. Don't hang up. I'm going to get to all of y'all. Okay, we have a caller. Thank you so much for calling back. Hi, you're on with the dialogue. Hello? I know you're there. I hear you breathing. Oh, call back. 323-473-3100. 323-473-3100. So you mentioned Obamacare covered California for us here. So what are your thoughts on, what is your position on the Affordable Care Act and the 7 million plus people that just got enrolled on by March 31st?
Well, one, I'm excited about the president's leadership, and I'm excited about that is during his time in which we have afforded to all Americans the opportunity to have health care coverage. When you talk about Watson, the 64th State Assembly District, and you have Martin Luther King Hospital that have some diminishing services that used to exist in terms of being the #1 trauma center, it's still not enough. We need to ensure that every community like Watts have full health care and access to good health care coverage and a good hospital facility, especially for emergency, especially for trauma.
King. We used to be called Killer King. Okay, we do have a caller. I'm going to ask you guys about Obamacare, but let me get to this caller. Hi, caller. You on the dialogue? You on with the dialogue?
Hi.
Hi, excellent. Do you have a comment or question for our guest?
I do. I have a question for Mr. Gibson.
Very good.
It's actually a two-part question.
Okay.
So how many jobs are there in Carson?
How many jobs are in Carson?
Like available? Like somebody can apply like right now?
No, how many people currently work in Carson?
Oh, okay.
I don't know how many people. Well, we've created, since I've been elected since 2005, we have the track record of and document of 161,000 new jobs because of the warehouses that we have in the city of Carson.
Yeah, and I heard you say that, and that's what's kind of interesting. Is that's if you do the math, that's literally 2 jobs for every man, woman, and child in Carson. And I'm kind of wondering how that's possible.
Well, Carson is 60% industrials. If you go and take a look down, drive down Central Boulevard, drive down Wilmington, you will see a lot of different warehouses in the city of Carson. Not to mention the jobs, the businesses that we have also attracted to come to the city of Carson.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, caller. You had a 2-part question. Were you done with your question?
Yeah, just
okay.
Those numbers don't add up.
Okay, thank you. We have another caller. Hi, caller. You on with the dialogue? Hello.
Hi.
Hi. Oh, and can you turn your radio down, please? Okay, you have a comment or question for our guest?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Please share with us your question.
Oh, I'm listening to it on the computer.
Oh, I need
Can
you turn it down because you're getting some feedback?
Yeah, I'm going to leave out of the room.
Okay.
So my question would be, as you just brought up the healthcare issue, and it's become a topic with the 62nd Assembly candidate what do the current candidates for the 64th Assembly feel about MICRA and the pressure to increase the cap on the malpractice lawsuits that potentially avoid having quality doctors in the state of California?
Excellent question. Councilman Neal.
Well, the micro issue is a very complex issue, but
Can you explain a little bit about what that is in layman's terms?
sure, there is a cap on what individuals can receive as compensation due to medical malpractice.
Okay.
And this cap has not been changed since 1976. So there is a move to, and the cap is $250,000. So there is a move to address that $250,000. However, folks that have these mishaps can be compensated in other ways. The challenge that it presents for particularly communities like ours is if you increase what doctors and medical professionals have to pay for insurance and things of that nature, it will continue to drive out quality healthcare providers in our areas.
Okay.
I think the micro issue is one that needs to be looked at, but maybe not necessarily changed in the manner that's being produced right now.
Okay.
Because it can have some devastating effects on
Did anybody else
residents
want to
of the
elaborate on this
64th.
question?
No, I think you did a great job.
Okay. All right. We have another caller. Hi, caller. You on with the dialogue?
Yes, I am. My name is John Harris.
Hi. You have a comment or question?
Yes, actually, I do. Thanks for taking my call. I actually have a question for two-parter. One for Neil, question one, and the second one for Prophet Walker.
Okay.
These two gentlemen have said wonderful things, but I haven't heard any specifics from the candidates regarding jobs. And so that's a general question for either one of them to answer. And then one specifically for Mr. Neal, if there's a tax code that you wanted to change in the revenue taxation code, what would that be, sir?
Well,
excellent question.
I'm saying that we need to look at our whole tax code and see where there are opportunities to change. We're having large numbers of businesses and corporations leave our state, which is causing a deficit of jobs for us, and many of them are citing because of the way that they're taxed here in the city. Let me put my disclaimer out. I've never been a state assembly person before, so I know that once I get to that seat, I will engulf myself in the duties and responsibilities of that area. But I know in general that I think this is an area that needs to be addressed. It needs to be drilled down upon, and then we need to see, are there areas that we can, find some type of balance, right, where the state needs money, but at the same time you want to create an environment where businesses can thrive and want to come here. If a business is going to take revenue out of the state, my thought is that they should be able to produce jobs in the state. We're having just the opposite, where folks are taking their jobs out of the state, right, and still making revenues, and I think it's something that needs to be addressed. I might not have specifics today, but placed in an environment where that's something that I could work on, I can definitely come up with some specifics.
Okay, we have two callers on hold. Please hold, but I want Prophet to answer that question.
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of jobs specifically, I think I have addressed specifically in infrastructure, and also the redevelopment project, for instance, will provide just immediately 40 to 50 jobs to residents within the area. And if we continue on the path of rebuilding our infrastructure within this area, that continues to increase both construction jobs and clerical jobs within the area. So that's one specific platform for jobs. And I also discussed the importance of rebranding this area so that, in fact, we can see more manufacturing and industry come back to the area to increase the amount of jobs. And I wanted to, last but not least, address one of the things that Steve talked about with the micro issue. I actually have a different opinion there, where I think it's important that we actually do increase somewhat of the cap. One of the issues that happened in where you called it Killer King was we had poor providers.
Absolutely.
And there's no way to hold people accountable if the cap remains so low.
Okay.
So it's important to make sure that when we're in communities like Watts, that we still have the exact same accountability and provider ability as Cedars-Sinai.
And being a marketing professional and with a background in real estate development, I appreciate the desire to change the brand and the image of Watts, because it is progressive and it does get a bad rap. Do we have another caller? Hi, caller. You on with the dialogue? You have a comment or question for our guest? Hello.
Yes, one last question.
Okay.
Mr. Gibson, I know Mr. Gibson has done a wonderful job with the city of Carson. And I dispute the other previous caller who mentioned about the numbers not adding up. I think they definitely add up if you look at the stats. Some are part-time, some are full-time jobs. Those are things to consider. But how is he going to, I know if you could explain more a little bit on how he's going to be able to replicate the success in Carson being one of the top 2 best business-friendly cities in the area, and how he's going to replicate that throughout the 54th, if Mr. Gibson doesn't mind.
Thank you for your question. Then we're going to talk about education after this.
Sure. Thank you very much for the question,
Okay,
caller.
thank you.
One of the things I would do is use my experience since I've been on city council for the past 9 years and replicate that experience throughout the entire district. And that is making sure that if you want to come to a particular area, then I will insist that you hire locally. And one of the things that the PLA, the project labor agreements, will allow you to do is through utilizing public money or private money, you have to hire within the community in order to making sure that job come to fruition, whether it's construction jobs, hire from the community. If it's retail, hire from the community. And that's one of the things, if you look in Carson, 85% of the employees at IKEA live in the city of Carson. You go to Olive Garden, 85%. We just had a Buffalo Wild Wings just opened up a few weeks ago. 85% of those employees come from the city of Carson. We're 99 Cent Store just opened up 3 weeks ago. 85% of those employees come from. We insist on that. Some people say you'll be sued in the whole 9 yards. Well, that's a lawsuit that we'll probably take on with someone. But we are unapologetic for putting people to work in our community.
I love it. We have so many callers, and I want to ask you about education, but I want to get to our callers first. Hi, you on with the dialogue?
Hi, this is Two Urban Girls giving another call.
Hi, Two Urban Girls. You have a comment or question for our guest?
Yes, I do. Thank you guys for answering the questions on Micra. My next question will fall probably more of a Mike Gibson question, but I think Prophet and Steve would also be aware of the issue with fracking. It's a big issue in terms of our water supply. Now we're facing a drought, and fracking does cause problems with our water. How are these candidates prepared to deal with that type of legislation should it come up during their term?
And thank you so much for that, because it was on my list of questions.
Sure.
And I'm going to start to talk about the water issue, because we are in a drought. We thirsty. We drinking lemonade right now, but we thirsty here in the state of California. Talk about the water issue and fracking.
Sure. Fracking in the city is so ironic, because in the city of Carson we had to deal with this particular issue in the city council within the past 30 days. The city of Carson placed a moratorium on fracking because there is a project to create 200 oil wells in the city of Carson, and they were going to use at one point last year hydraulic fracking.
Okay, so let me just have you back up a little bit. Just explain just a little bit what fracking is, just for the sake of our audience.
Fracking is hydraulic water being pressurized that would cut through the earth and to extract the actual oil that lies beneath.
Okay.
And so what this would also does, it will cause tremblers, earthquakes, people's foundations to crumble, and it could in fact help.
Is that why we having all these earthquakes?
Have some health care risks. The city of Carson, we put a moratorium on it. First of all, it's not in this project. It's taken out, first of all. Then secondly, we put a 45-day moratorium on it. And we just, last night at a city council meeting at 2 o'clock in the morning, a.m., we just voted to support Senator Holly Mitchell bill, which is Senate Bill 1132, that calls for a statewide ban on fracking in the state of California.
Okay. Issues on water and fracking.
I think it's interesting that this question was brought up, and specifically Mike speaking about it in terms of Carson. One of the larger issue of fracking has oftentimes to deal with the oil companies, and it's a big deal when specifically Mike, I had a question for about the almost over 10 grand taking from oil companies, and how does that align with Carson's
Oh, so we starting our
vision.
candidate
No,
candidate
well,
question? We
well,
starting
it's
it.
like-
You
it's Carson's-
won't start, and that won't be none.
Carson's vision to end fracking, and I appreciate what the council has done. It is important to certainly look at these. It's an innovative way, but also we're in a drought, and we need to focus on the effects that has over.
Will you address his comment?
Sure. He made an indication that I take in or don't, or the oil companies donated money, but if you look at my record, just within the last 30 days, I voted against it.
Okay. All right.
And so I want people to be clear that just because you support my candidacy, and I've been elected to office for the past 9 years, people have donated to my campaign, but doesn't mean that you buy my vote. Means that sometime if I disagree with it, I'll still receive your support, but understand you don't buy me, nor do you buy my vote. And so I think my track records display that, and I think it did within the past 30 days. Some of those same companies gave campaign contributions to me, and I'm very appreciative, but the end result was I voted against them.
Okay. So, I want to quickly move into just an area of political accountability. Did you want to make a comment on the water and the fracking before I move on?
Well, I think it's a huge issue for the state, and as council members said, over 100 cities have banned fracking. The senator has a bill. Again, that creates, because we have fracking in Long Beach, but we don't have the kind of issues that some of the other cities have had because of the areas where they frack. As far as fracking so close to residential areas, I think there is a balance again, because if you take this tool away from the oil industry, again, does that mean that other companies are now going to leave the state that provide other opportunities? There's a balance that.
But
go ahead.
But I also want to make mention that you can still extract the oil from the ground without using hydraulic fracking.
Okay.
So there's other methods, in fact, that you can still use that are safe, that people can still extract that kind of oil. We no longer are drilling offshore, so we have to try to figure out how do we get oil out of the ground in order without messing with our water table, first of all,
mess with
and
the water.
also make sure that it doesn't affect our environment and people's health are not
And
in
like you
fact
said, the water.
at risk.
Yes,
We thirsty.
It messes with the water and also the air. So
Okay.
Absolutely.
there are other challenges with it.
And there's other ways in order to get oil.
We're
as
big
well.
on political accountability here. We want to hold you to what you say. So I'm going to start with you, Prophet. How do the constituents of the 64th Assembly District, if you are elected to office, how do we hold you accountable for what you are professing in terms of your issues in your campaign? How do we hold you accountable?
I think it's important not to be any different than it is now. Everything that I do within Watts and within the community, I literally sit down when I walk into a board meeting. I bring community members with me. It's important that the people in the community actually have a voice. Until that happens, there's no way to hold people accountable. So it's important that there's a fluidity of communication between.
How do we hold you accountable?
I run in my council office what's called a community empowerment model, which is that exact thing. I don't think change comes from, be it Sacramento or a local municipality. Change comes from the ground up, and we don't hold our elected officials accountable, and that's why we get the things that we get. I make sure that folks have accessibility to me, that we're responsive, that we have the most responsive staff in the city, and that could be the state or whatever office that we're serving in. But our goal is to be responsive and also to be accessible and make sure that folks are informed and engaged.
How do we hold you accountable?
Being accountable and accessible. That's the bottom line. I surround myself with people who don't just want to be around me just because of who I am, but they're around me because they're not afraid to tell me that you're wrong. Look me in the eye.
We can check you.
Pull my coattail. I have people in the city of Carson who check me all the time when I need to be checked. And I don't think that, one, I'm not the person who believes his own press clippings.
Okay.
Because people in the city of Carson call me Mike all day. And Mike, who I am, is Mike, who I'm going to die. And so people have no problems with calling me on my business cards, my council business card. It has my phone number on it, and people can call me anytime. So I'm accessible to my residents, and I'm accountable to the people that I serve. And I think that's how I bring the integrity to this office, and that's how I think that I'm going to govern, with my integrity, being able to look in the mirror each and every day.
Okay, so speaking of media,
for accountability, really quick, I think it's important for all of us is when we say accountability, we have a job first to vote and represent this district, and then California at large. So when we're accountable, our residents are of the district, we should be voting and doing everything in our power to move forward the betterment of the district, not our political
so what is your
careers.
expectations of your endorsements, and what do you want your constituents to believe? Because you have this particular endorsement, that particular endorsement. I mean, is that supposed to move us to vote for you? I mean, how important are these endorsements, and what do they mean to you?
Well, I think the endorsements mean a great deal. I think it speaks to the person who you are, and I think that those endorsements means that someone believes in you, they support you, they trust you, you will carry on their ideals. Public safety is something that I hold close and dear to me. That's why ALADS, the sheriffs, has endorsed me. The LAPD Protective League has endorsed me. The California Police Chiefs Association of the State of California has endorsed my candidacy, as well as the teachers has endorsed me as well. And I think those endorsements sends a strong message to those communities that Mike Gibson is the kind of person who's going to be relentless on their issues.
What endorsements mean to you?
Well, what endorsements mean is that folks have confidence in you.
Okay.
Folks believe in your integrity, and they're willing to stand with you and support you.
Okay.
Very similar to Steve. People have confidence, willing to stand with you, and also in some cases, I think, for instance, Tony Cardenas has endorsed me. He's been a champion for juvenile justice and the efforts of moving juvenile justice forward in California. And I think he sees in me the ability to carry on that banner also.
Okay. So speaking, you mentioned media. So we had talked prior to the show about these polls, where the polls really lie. So the Millman Group puts Makai Ali at an 8-point lead. The Daily Breeze says you got 29% of the votes. Makai got 12. Steve got 9. Prophet got 8. Who telling the truth? What's the polls? What's your feedback on the poll? What polls we supposed to believe? What's happening?
Believe my poll.
What's your poll? You in the lead?
No.
What's your poll say?
I'm not in the lead.
What's your poll? So I mean, really, in terms of constituents, I mean, what polls? How do we read these polls? How do we trust them?
I think it's important for us to actually look at the poll. Mike put out a poll saying that he was in the lead, and in fact,
a 17-point lead.
And in fact, when you go based on name recognition, initially Mike is in fact in the lead.
Okay.
With a 46% of people undecided in the district,
Okay.
haven't heard of any of us. The part that Mr. Gibson failed to show in the poll was what happens after when you begin. So a part of this poll, it judges based on name ID initially, and then you begin to tell everything about the candidate, good, bad, and ugly, and then what happens after that.
Okay.
And one of the things that the polls has showed, certainly on our end, and I think Makai somewhat speaks to, and I wonder why Mr. Gibson didn't speak to this, but it actually shows that I began to increase substantially in the league, and Mike actually begins to fall behind.
You want to address that?
Well, I don't know what his polls show. I think our polls, first of all, let me just talk about the poll itself. I think the poll is a barometer in terms of on messaging. I think the poll shows what voters wants to hear and what they feel comfortable with in terms of in a candidate who's going to represent them. First of all, I'm not going to hang my hat on the poll, whatever the polls show. I'm going to work hard like I'm 20 points behind. I'm going to knock on every door. I'm going to make sure that no one in my campaign outcalls me. I'm going to make sure that I'm in every church, every street corner, talking to everybody in the community. And I think that's the kind of leadership and that's the kind of commitment that I have, that I think that the poll will show on June the 3rd that Mike Gibson has worked hard. People believe in him and believe in his leadership.
Well, I think you got some catching up to do.
Okay, but
I'm the only candidate that went and collected signatures from the
Ask a question of either of these candidates. Ask a question of either of them.
Of either of them.
Either of them.
So what does your poll say? I haven't seen.
That's your question.
I haven't seen his poll. I've seen everyone else's poll. I haven't seen Prophet's poll.
Okay.
So my poll says that, again, starting off, Mike has exceptional name idea about, or not exceptional, about 20 some odd %. As the poll continues on, my message very much resonates with the constituents there, and I come in at one of the leaders.
Now we have
to make it in the
images with your images and your website, but again, tell our viewers how people can find you and follow you if they want to support your candidacy for the 64th Assembly
Sure,
District.
they can follow me on Facebook, Twitter. They can go to my website, www.mikegibson.net. My phone number is 310-704-6589. That's my personal cell phone
Ladies,
number.
he's married, so don't be calling all hours of the night.
My residents have access to me, and I want to make sure the voters have access to me as well.
Thank you so much
You're
for
very
coming
welcome.
here.
Thank you.
How can people find you?
You can reach us at steveneal.org.
And we're showing your
or
image.
you can email us at steve@steveneal.org.
Okay. And I'm sorry, do you have any events coming up where people can find you?
Yes, my campaign kickoff will be on April the 12th at 10 o'clock in the morning, Avalon and Carson Street.
And where can people find you? What event you got coming up?
Wow. My campaign kickoff is April the 12th.
Okay.
On Avalon and Del Amo Street.
Okay. And how can people find you, Prophet?
You can find me at www.prophetwalker2014.com, or you can email me directly at pwalk, WALK, and then the letter E95 at gmail.com. That's a direct email to me. And our next event's coming up. I'll actually be this Saturday. I'll be in Compton working on a job fair, and voters can come and meet me then.
Excellent. Thank you all for coming. Mike Gibson, Steve Neal, Prophet Walker. Good luck. Make sure you vote on June 3rd for the primary. We're hoping that you got to get to know some of these candidates and you have leaning a little bit more towards your vote. So again, this month we are meeting the candidates with our series Let's Talk Politics. Next week we're going to have candidates from the 62nd Assembly District here. Thank you to Richard Carr and my girl Dallas Fowler. Join us next week for the Dialogue Real Talk Real People. I'm your host, Starlett Quarles, signing off as my mama's child and my daddy's baby girl. Until next week.
Thank you for tuning in to LA Talk Live, reality radio handcrafted for your listening pleasure. This is LA Talk Live, and we're more than just talk.